Okay, so I figured I'd just make a couple videos on the projects I'm working on. I'm gonna start with the communicator module. So the communicator serves to communicate with a server, and you can find it on this URL. If you're using Browserify, you can just npm install it. If you're not using Browserify, you're gonna have to download the build. So I've already set up a sales server with the build in there. So I'm going to run the sales server, and I have a small implementation as well. So basically I'll just show you the sales setup. This is just a regular sales setup, nothing special really. Let me just close everything. Everything is default except for one. Oh, there's tons of shit, but I use none. It like does nothing. So in the front end, there's just this communicator, which is the implementation of the module I'm showing you. And then the dependencies, so jQuery, sales.io is sales dependency, and then the communicator. Now this is the build file you download. So, right. If you look at this, this is how we use this module. So, first property, name, pretty self-explanatory. A name is needed because there could be multiple communicators, and there's one object that contains all data with all communicators and all their connections and requests and stuff. So it needs a key to put it on. So yeah, it needs a name. So it needs these two. It doesn't need them, but you can specify them. They're pretty self-explanatory. If you create a request, it'll default to this connection, and if you create a connection, it'll default to this adapter. Right. So there's three concepts really: adapters, connections, and requests. Adapters do the actual transport of data between client and server. Connections use an adapter to execute requests to a server URL. And requests are just blueprints for requests. They use a connection to execute themselves. Note that requests can contain splats. That's because they become functions that you can execute where the arguments provided map onto the splats. And then the last argument is the request body for the request. So in this case, we provide one argument, the ID, and then we could provide another one, which would be the request body. So if there's no splats in the route whatsoever, then the first argument is also the last argument, so the first argument is the request body. Right. So that's that. Also note that this key right here contains a dot, and what will happen is this will be set deeply. So I'll just show you in a second. For more information, you can refer to the documentation. It's quite thorough, so just go here. There's a walkthrough. There's all the specs, examples everywhere. So yeah, you should be able to do a lot by just reading this. So let's see what this does. Our sales server has started, so let's just navigate to its root. Right, so brand new sales app, sure. Let's see what happened. So this, if you're not using Browserify, by the way, this is the global variable that gets added, communicator with capital C. And we added another global variable, communicator with lowercase c. So let's take a look at communicator lowercase c. Right, so this matches the spec of this thing right here. And let's actually do some stuff. So I created two requests in two different ways, just to show you guys. One way to create a request is specified on a connection, and another way to do it is just to specify it on the request object. We can also define request at runtime. Let me just get the connection. Connections, local XHR. Right. So we can define a new request on the connection by calling this method and passing the same object we pass here, except for this would be the name property. So we can do this. We can just go, right. We already have one, but we could just add another. Just find by ID again. Right. Comma. All right. So we added another request, but let's see, how do we execute a request? So we're on communicator. We want to go to a connection because we want to execute some request on a connection. I just set this variable, so connection. We can either just do gets and posts from here, like get/user. That will work fine. But we created requests, so we'd rather just use those. There's a server property, which is most useful for this. You can also access them using requests. But using server is nicer. This is because request contains the actual objects to, I'll just show you. Find all, in this case, is a request instance. And if we use server, find all is the function. So really, if you want to use request or only have access to it, you can use the execute method, which is the same thing. But server is the preferred method, so let's use server. And let's execute find all. Okay, so that does the same thing. Let's see what it looked like in the definition. So just gonna go, we didn't save that. It just looks like this. Very simple. So method get route user, and this is the name, so user.find all, right? Obviously it's on this connection, so cool. Right, we also see find by ID again, which is the one we added during runtime. So if I just execute this without any arguments, remember this is find by ID, so it wants an ID argument. There's an ID splat. So we get kind of friendly errors that say, you know, this doesn't satisfy all splats, so you're missing some arguments. We're missing the ID. So let's pass the ID, and it did a request for that route. Obviously, we can also use define by ID we defined in here rather than during runtime. There's some more advanced features, like adding a resolve method or a reject method to a request. What these two do is they get executed when the request either resolves or rejects. And you can either transform data from here, so data.firstName, for example, I'm going to set to, hello 123, and I'm going to return the data, because you have to return what you want the value to be. Right, so transforming data, but you can also return a promise from here, and you can even reject. So when a request was successful, like the actual request was successful, you can still reject it if it doesn't meet some response criteria. Right, so the same thing for reject. If a request fails, so it rejects, you can still resolve it. But if you want to know more about this, you can visit this page, and it contains everything is documented, like every method. So yeah. So let's take a look at what we get. So at first, we got first name ABC for user 56. Let's restart sales because it keeps crashing on me. And we have to obviously set our variable again, connection. And we changed find by ID, so let's execute find by ID. And remember we had ABC, I think it was, as a name. We didn't have hello123, that's for sure. So let's execute this, and we can see here, hold on, it's going to say ABC. I forgot to actually show you that these return promises, so this is just going to log to the console whatever is resolved, or yeah, resolved from this promise. So you can see we get first name is ABC, but when we execute this, first name is hello123, and that's because of this resolve method here. You don't have to do transforms. You can also just return the same data and set the user to the session, for example. If this is a login request, you would typically always want that to happen after a login. So that would be useful. Let me think if there's anything else. I don't think so. That's it.